yet another series we have spawning in the orange, all the way over here on the northeast side, playing as the Ottomans. It is AltCtrl. Who do we have spawning in the west over here?
In the southwest, in blue, as the Chinese, it's Simtom. And we're back on Maracita, which is a very fun map. The first time I'm actually seeing it is here right now with you guys casting, and I very much enjoy it. I think it's a cool layout. I think it is kind of a fun mix between something like wetlands, Frisian marshes, and a little bit more like Golden Hill, maybe a little bit. It's got a little bit of French Pass going on. Like, I don't know. It's fun. I like this map a lot.
Yeah, I like just having that little bit of water. I think can dictate the way games change on some maps, and then some maps it doesn't. I think this is some matchups. I'm sorry, it doesn't. So just like we saw last game with Chinese and Malia, they did not go for water at all throughout the context of the game. Whereas this one, now that there's Ottomans here, instead, maybe somebody will go for that shorefish. We don't know.
Well, I mean, the Chinese player, Simtom, is only about one screen away from the water on the west side, so it wouldn't be too much of a walk for him to drop a mill there. He could take the deer and these fish all at once with one mill. That'd be really nice, honestly. Really good in-court source of food income in the early game. The only issue is that he would have to make sure that those mills are safe, as this is a really open map, and it would be not a tough thing for AltCtrl to send his free early spearmen from his military academy over there to harass those villagers.
Yeah, and I think if he scouted something like water going on, I feel like he would have did that, but no military school from him. It looks like he doesn't take his 5 villagers and go for the stone. He has a pretty out-of-the-way stone here, AltCtrl does on the north. Now, this matchup, I know with the new changes to China, we don't have much in the way of experience just because it's a few days old, but overall, just, theoretically, what do you think about this matchup and the favorites?
So I think there's a lot less pressure on the Ottomans to do damage when the Chinese aren't so much of a powerhouse in terms of their economy snowball. When you were playing against Song Dynasty China previously, and I think this is still the case somewhat, but more so in the past, there was a ticking clock on you. You got to do damage. You got to do damage right now, because they will outstrip you and they will run away with the late game. That feels a little bit more blunted, and there is still a little bit of a clock where you have to make something happen before China gets out of control. But it feels like you can more easily keep pace with them if you wanted to. You could drop 3 town centers and you wouldn't be at a huge disadvantage. You could, try and keep pace with them economically, or you can try and do some damage before they get out of control, because it's going to take them longer to reach the point where they are way too strong, because their villager production is slower than it used to be. So I think it's a very healthy change for the game, and I think it puts us as people playing into China with more options than we had previously, which I think is really the position you want to put your players in. So I think it was an excellent change from the devs.
Hey, cheers to that, my friend. And but based on how this map is structured, as we can see here, which I'm going to pan through, we have this rather large mountainous structure between both of these civs, where it's not like Hideout where the woods just connect both players. You have this natural barrier between them. So for AltCtrl, you're exactly right. I mean, he could see how many town centers that China is doing in terms of Song Dynasty and just keep adding them, because having that little bit of barrier means, it's going to be easier to wall on this northwest side, and it's going to be easy for him to wall for the Ottomans in between these 2 wood patches here. So this map spawn is going to help him, one. And secondly, just the actual design of the map is going to help him compete also.
Yeah, and so he gets that twin minaret madrasa up really relatively good time, a little bit later than his Chinese counterpart. In fact, the Song Dynasty is going to begin relatively quickly. The Barbican of the Sun was dropped before Simtom even made it up to the feudal age. So very cool there to see that kind of interesting play come out. What that's going to mean is that he gets that villager production ramp, starts as early as possible, puts the pressure on AltCtrl as fast as he possibly can. Also, I have to take just 1 second and appreciate. So nice to see orange and blue. I think they're just excellent colors. Why don't we play more in orange versus blue? I feel like we should.
I think aren't they complementary colors on the
They're
color wheel?
opposites on the color wheel, yeah, so it's kind of perfect.
Yeah, it is nice. It helps differentiate between the both, and a little nice change of pace from red and blue. Waiting for purple though. Haven't seen any purple yet.
Orange versus purple next. Come on.
Oh,
Calling
that'd
out
be good.
right now.
That'd be pretty good. Ottoman's going with a stable initially, so they're still not doing military school things. I'm not seeing anything out here, even though they do have 3 villagers on stone. There we go. First military school coming up on the south, but going to be making Sipahi out of the stable, which I think he's expecting something Zugnu related, and I got to hand it for AltCtrl. That's kind of what Chinese does, so I understand the stable.
So far, not currently the intention of Simtom. He's actually playing really defensive. I like this cute little wall he's thrown up next to his wood villagers. It forces any raiding cavalry to walk through the radius of the town center instead of just running right along the wood line there. So it guarantees a little bit more damage gets done, kind of makes it a little bit more uncomfortable for raids to happen. It's cute. I like it. And it doesn't, it's relatively inexpensive. I think this cost him 15 wood or something. Like, that's nothing. That's totally worth it.
And especially because of the this is really helpful for the Chinese just because the hand cannon slits out of the town center. Right, the Sipahi have 135 health, so taking 25 every time that hits. Plus, if he tries to take about this gold mine, which the scout and the first Sipahi were trying to do, the Barbican's going to be able to take shots at them as well. So this is a very defensible base for China, and he's even adding walls up in the north to protect his villager count, which is going to go above just about hitting plus 10 in favor of China.
Oh, I think I lost you for a second there. Are you back?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. Yeah, I think I lost you for just a second. But yeah, I love the way that this is being... that he's got all of his IOs out already. Sometimes there's a little bit of a temptation to get those in a little bit later, but he's making sure that he's supervising all 3 kind of quote-unquote main resources. Food, gold, and wood, all supervised. And now he's supervising, spearmen out. He knows that Sipahi are trying to be built, so supervising spearmen means you'll get them out as fast as you possibly can. You've got the counter. So I think, early game, Simtom's played this really well, and is coming out in a really good spot. He'd like to prevent this... this tower from going up if he can, and I honestly think he can. The spearmen are going to come out so fast because they're supervised. I think he can keep the tower from going up at all, which is going to put him in a really good spot. I really like Simtom's early game.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite easy because he was going for this economic build. AltCtrl saw it and was like, oh, we can't have any of that. So with his units and pulled some villagers forward with a tower. The problem is exactly what you said with the IO. He got spearmen and his technology in 6 seconds. So you could just instantly shift. While him doing that and having the military now taking the lead from AltCtrl because of some Sipahi going down, he still has plus 12 more villagers. So
I also really like the way that Simtom positioned his spearmen when he was taking down that outpost. He positioned his spearmen between the outpost and the tree so that the Sipahi had to fight 1 or 2 at a time against the spearmen. Little things, little micro positioning things make big differences, and that really ensured that he was able to make sure that tower did not go up and get favorable trades in the early game. Like I said, I haven't seen a lot of Simtom's play. I know he plays very well. I used to watch him play a lot during AoE 3, but just seeing little things he does here, watching him so far today, has really made me kind of a little bit of a Simtom fan. Just really, really smart play from him, coming out in a lot of different ways. Now migrating a lot of his villagers over to the left side. Going to be dropping that mill I mentioned in the early game. Going to be able to take deer and these fish if he should so choose, all at once, which is going to be a really nice boost to food. And because he was able to safely wall up the left side here, he can be relatively assured that those villagers are going to be safe.
Right, and that wall is just about ready to be completed, so all of those villagers going to have a stable food economy, going to be able to pump out units, and it does take a large food economy to pump out 2 TC Song Dynasty if he chooses to do that, so that'll help give him some help in the economic sense, but also he's doing well in the militaristic sense, adding Zugnu in with their repeater crossbows, and AltCtrl trying to make a little bit of an archer mass here. I don't think he's gonna be able to have enough compared to 2 town centers, with some of them being supervised for a short time.
Well, AltCtrl has also gathered up quite a bit of stone. I think he may be aiming to drop a second town center here and try and keep villager parity with Simtom. Simtom is in the Song Dynasty, but only has 1 town center, so a second town center would actually put AltCtrl ahead in terms of production speed. So that might be his goal here, is to try and play for a later game and speed up his production to a pace that will actually outstrip the Chinese in the short term, and rely upon the military academies and the military production buildings he has up right now to keep himself alive until then, because he's kind of saying, I'm not afraid of what the Chinese will do in the feudal age. If you want to fight me and make me pay, you're going to have to do it later in the game, and by then I'll have thrown down some extra production buildings and things like that. So I think that's a good move.
I do agree with you, because I mean, for China, I mean, they have one of the best feudal archers, if not the best. I mean, you can argue with the longbowman. So for the Ottomans, you're gonna need more production. You're gonna need a military lead in battles that you take. Especially what does help, and I'm gonna zoom in on it so everybody can hear the sound of the bongos once again, is the meter. Having the ability to have 15% increased attack speed, just showing how powerful the sound of music really is.
I did not expect your sentence to go that. That's good. That's cute. I like that. But it's very true. That extra damage, and if he goes into the vizier point that gives movement speed, that can also be a big deal. So there's a world in which you take down some of these those spearmen, and then the Sipahi are able to freely activate fortitude. They'll eat these Yuganu up for breakfast, because fortitude is only a big deal against melee damage. If all the spearmen go down, you can activate that, and it's essentially no penalty to do an additional 50% damage against all these Yuganu, which puts AltCtrl in a really good spot in terms of his team fight here in the feudal age. The one thing he does have to be wary of, as long as Simtom doesn't throw away all of his army here, is that he's going up to Castle Age. I don't know if I would have pushed out with your army if you planned on going up to Castle Age. That feels a little bit counterproductive. And he is going to get completely cleaned up here, which means he's going to be kind of naked once he gets up with the astronomical clock tower. The good news is that he can supervise out a nest of bees, or I can't supervise, but he'll get out a nest of bees, which should be able to keep him safe. But I do think it was a mistake to move out with your army while you're going up to Castle Age. That feels like an anti-timing to me.
Yeah, and maybe, I mean, Simtom might have been a little bit overconfident, being like, well, I probably have enough units and blah, blah, blah. But with the meta, and AltCtrl did have a +8 military lead going into that battle, it was, kind of clear as day why Simtom got cleared up. He had numbers and he had better units. But now Simtom trying to idle out, or trying to make sure his villagers aren't idle, but he's got 20 sitting in both the village and the town center. The meta ends up going down for the Ottomans. No more bongos will be bongoing. And now AltCtrl hitting Castle Age. So now, as unit compositions start to transition to Castle Age, what do you think we're going to see?
Well, the Yuganu are going to fall off here, because the men-at-arms are going to be good enough that they can resist that. I think it's a smart play for Simtom to go into Palace Guards here, because the archers will be eaten alive by the Palace Guards. And you can supplement that with maybe some horsemen or nest of bees, things like that. Something that can counter archers very well for you. And that should put you in a position where you can push. He's going to need a second to do that. But this wall still currently remains on the left side, which means that, oh, look at the nest of bees eat all those archers up. That's juicy. Love me some nest of bees.
Look at all that fertilizer for the soil too. All of those archer corpses. Might put a granary down there if you're careful. But it looks like Simtom on the other side trying to get some raids on the Ottoman villagers, and you gotta think about, now that some of these villagers from AltCtrl are going down, these horseman raids are left pretty much unattended. The villagers that AltCtrl loses are huge compared to Simtom's, because Simtom can just make another in 15 seconds. He doesn't care. AltCtrl doesn't, and he only has 1 town center.
One thing I want to see more production coming out from Simtom. Not more production buildings, but produce something out of the buildings. He's making knights, betterman horsemen, which are a little bit slow to train. And he's got enemies in his base right now. He does have one Lancer here in the vicinity that's doing some work, and the nest of bees is like just making its weight in worth its weight in gold right now. It is absolutely paying for itself already. But I'd love to see just a little bit more production, a little faster out from some of these, like this barracks. Supervise out some spearmen. Make sure that no more Sipahi can really be sent into your wood line here. I would have liked to see that a couple minutes ago to prevent a couple more of these villager losses. But when it's all said and done, Simtom does still maintain the villager lead, and he's on par with his military. So, you know, I do think he's doing okay for the time being. I'm surprised that AltCtrl never dropped a second town center. He's had the stone for a long time now. He's had the wood. And he still kind of currently does. He's dropped some military schools instead, but I really thought that that was his plan going forward. I think that would have served him well here because he knows that Simtom is stuck on one base and has not expanded yet.
See, and I agree with you. I think if he just added a couple more onto wood, he would have been able to do both. He would have been able to do military schools and then would have been able to do a town center because he did have enough archers in the beginning, you know, because he was able to take that fight against Zugnu. So you weren't really using that wood too much. You might as well make a town center because now you're at a 22 villager deficit. And don't look now because on the western side of this map, Simtom has a lot on stone. Looks like about 11. And he's probably looking for a keep to drop in the Ottoman's face.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, normally like we're generally used to seeing a lot of Chinese, you know, booming. They like to boom. They like to use that Song Dynasty to their favor. But Simtom using one base Song Dynasty to make sure that his villager count is ahead of his opponent as long as his opponent doesn't expand, and AltCtrl has steadfastly refused to do so thus far. It means that he's able to keep parity with his military. Uh-oh, Nest of Bees a little bit exposed here. These Sipahi are able to loop around and are going to get on top of it. It is going to fall. A little bit of an expensive loss there. So moving a little bit far out of position. There is a secondary clock tower Nest of Bees back here, but he has to make sure to keep it alive. That is his best defense against these archers right now, as the archers will actually tear through these horsemen decently well when they're in this number if the Nest of Bees doesn't take them out.
And we do see the clock tower Nest of Bees waypoint going towards these archers trying to A-boo. But you're right, that first, having 2 Nest of Bees obviously is better than 1 because we all can count. But having 2 of them hitting the same ball at the same time means a lot of instant death for archers and crossbowmen. So the first one, that first clock tower Nest of Bees with its clock striking midnight means Simtom has to keep all of his units over on the base. And a huge thank you to the raid from Salami. I hope you had fun in the tournament, and I appreciate you guys coming all in and watching. Hopefully you get to watch semifinals, finals, and a lot of the other series going forward.
Thank you so much for the raid. We're really excited to have all of you new viewers here. This is the official stream for the MetaPlays finale tournament here, and we are super excited to be bringing you AltCtrl versus Simtom. And actually, as we were speaking, the wall was burned down on the left side for Simtom. Now, unfortunately for AltCtrl, a stone wall has since been thrown up on the backside. So Simtom is still more than safe from raids on the left side. Forces everything to go around this right side if they want to do some fighting. Right underneath this keep that Simtom is throwing up right now, turned out that that stone he was gathering up was for a defensive keep, not a keep drop. Now, there is trebuchets around the corner. Siege Workshop already out. Trebuchets can come very soon. But first we have to get this this keep up. AltCtrl would really like to deny it if he can. There are troops here in the vicinity. I don't know if they're going to be focusing the villagers down fast enough in order to prevent the keep from going up. It's going to be really close. All of these units all on top of the villagers. Wow. It's going to come up, but that doesn't prevent it. The keep does end up going up. But a lot of the villagers and the second Nest of Bees will go down. So while the keep gets up, I think Simtom still lost a lot on the other side. He just ended up losing it in all of his military going down.
And you know, I'm going to be honest with you, just because that economic count is going to be almost 80 to 46, I don't think Simtom cares. Like, he's okay with getting that keep up and making sure that this eastern side of this natural barrier here, which was pretty much the only place of attack that AltCtrl could do, now that it has a big bad keep there, he's going to be needing to make trebuchets that are 500 wood that he doesn't have. So he might be able to keep it. And on the flip side here, we have raids from Chinese Lancers on Ottoman villagers. Watch that eco count just continue to fall for AltCtrl.
Yeah, Simtom really recognizing that the left side was his domain, sent some troops through it because the walls were only up for one side, and was really able to make AltCtrl pay for the lack of defense on the backside, cleaning up all sorts of villagers. I'm also surprised to see that AltCtrl still producing mangonels out of the MIA. He could have free trebuchets, could have had 2 of them out by now if he really wanted to, but has continued to produce only mangonels, which are of use against archers, but there aren't really any of those being produced by the Chinese player. He has 3 Zhuganu, and everything else that he's built is cavalry, but he'd really like to take down that keep if he can, and some trebuchets would be a great help with that. Gonna lose that mangonel, so it didn't even end up paying for itself. These lancers will eventually get cleaned up, but it is now 44 to 90 villagers. Simtom has literally double the villagers of AltCtrl at this time, and I do not like AltCtrl's position whatsoever. I keep, I hate to keep harping on it, but how much better would things have looked if he had dropped his second town center so much earlier? He has it up now, but things would have looked so much better for him if he had put that up when we were talking about it around, minute 10 or something like that.
Oh yeah, I mean he could have 30 more villagers right now, and I don't really think that's an exaggeration either. Um, on the flip side, Simtom, he kind of stalled a little bit on military production because more so wanted to make sure his economy was okay back home, and now we are going straight to Granary Town. 3 granaries along with that astronomical clock tower on the backside of Simtom's base. So his food, he used the shorefish and the deer on this backside just to have a little bit of a bridge between doing farm economy. And what I've noticed, that is a decent weak point of the Chinese. After those first berries and after those first sheep go down, they got to find food somewhere to maintain their economy in terms of their town center pumping out villagers and the resources that they want to spend on feudal units. So being able to attack that second area makes it difficult for China to really get going. But Simtom, he had free reign of these shorefish and these deer, able to transition to granaries perfectly, and now I don't think anything's going to stop him at this point.
No, Simtom, I love his position right now. Like, this is the position that all China players dream of when they go to sleep at night and they're thinking about their ranked games the next day. They want to be in this position. They want to be up with double the villagers. They want to have one side of their base completely stonewalled in. They want to have the granary transition already completed, and now they can focus completely on just producing military. He can go up to, imp if he finds himself with the villagers sometime later on, and get, some fire lancers maybe if he really wants to make something spicy happen. But right now, 100% of Simtom's resources are going towards military, and that's where the Chinese want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because at this point, because he has his quote-unquote late-game economy, he can just max out and go for it, and then continue to stay there. And we see him attempting to do that by the amount of production buildings he has. And as I'm panning through, look at how many we have. We have all of these barracks, all these stables, all these archery ranges. We got some more up here. And he can produce out of all of them consistently. So I would say for anybody watching, try not to blink, especially for the next minute, because we're going to see Simtom have a huge military.
Yeah, AltCtrl does actually have the military lead for the time being, but in terms of total pop, Simtom is ahead because his economy... Oh my goodness, that was so juicy though. If there's a way for AltCtrl to hang on, it's going to be mangonel shots like that. That was spicy. Woo!
Rather, those cheeky mangonel shots, if Simtom's not careful, he could never get the military lead. I know he has a couple nest of bees out that he's in the queue, but I might be thinking more in the Springle department's going to help you a little bit better. Having that siege advantage with those mangonels in the battle means that Simtom is always going to be fighting at a disadvantage, don't you think?
Yeah, honestly, that is my one. I'm really happy with Simtom in almost every aspect except for his siege production. I feel like China's siege is so busted, and we have seen very little of it. There have been a handful of nested bees built this game, and that is it. I would have loved to see another siege workshops thrown down, and potentially even like supervising out multiple springled / nested bees. You could be in a really strong siege position right here if you were able to put just a little bit more focus on that. And Simtom has the resources to do that. Look at all the res he's floating right. So that's definitely something that's possible.
Well, I think one of the major issues for AltCtrl now in terms of his army composition is look at what his army is. He's got 20 crossbowmen, 19 archers, so yeah, he's going to be able to do something against some of these lancers, but not in time. Those mangonels get turned to shrapnel, essentially, and now these clock tower nested bees have free reign over this range mass because there's no front line for AltCtrl, so he's got to back up.
Yeah. The nest of bees are just going to wreck everything that's here, and the mangonels would have done the same, but the cavalry were online to take them out. So now this is, I mean, you can see how comfortable AltCtrl is with this situation. Panic throwing 2 outposts down on the front side of his base, trying to keep enemies from getting too close to him.
He does do a good job of making sure his range mass is staggered. However, nested bees having a little bit more range, and because he has no front mass to take care of these nested bees, he's sending villagers out there instead of filling up those outposts. All those villagers end up going down. I'm not even going to tell you what the economy count is because I'm shocked and appalled. And
he didn't even get the nested bees for it. The nested bees is still alive.
Yeah, exactly. And everything that AltCtrl makes does a damage of 1 to these clock tower nested bees, so it's not going to be, it's not going to be doing too much for him. I think AltCtrl is going to keep backing up until he's at his landmarks, and then we're going to see a tap out, to be honest.
The problem is that crossbowmen, in theory, do counter lancers, but the problem is that the crossbowmen cannot stand still to shoot. The second they stand still, the nest of bees fires on them, and then they're toast. They have to continue moving to stay out of range of the nest of bees, which means they're not able to do as much damage as they want to be doing to those lancers.
Yeah, I think a huge thing for AltCtrl, we need some springolds, man. That's the only thing. I mean, at least 3, so you can one-tap all of these nested bees, because that's the only way you're going to have any kind of claim in this fight. Those range mass, look at how far they have to back up now. This second town center completely, just because it was more forward, completely in range of all of Simtom's units, so that thing will be going down rather shortly. And now AltCtrl doesn't have the economy to build up the army that he wants to.
AltCtrl really needed more cavalry than he had. There are a handful of spearmen out here at best. 8 spearmen is all. If he had made a full transition, if he was using these crossbowmen as a secondary source along with some knights, I think he would be a lot happier here because he could snipe out a lot of the siege from his opponents. He would have something that can go toe-to-toe with these palace guards. As it stands, he's hinging all of his hopes on these crossbowmen, and they're so fragile against these nested bees that his positioning is really tenuous. If he's out of position for 1 second, he's going to find himself with no army, and that's GG.
Yeah, and there was that little choke point in between the military school and the blacksmith. Only 3 archers went down, but exactly what you said, the fact that he was in a bad spot, he had to back up even further. And if you keep hearing that and keep seeing this on your screen, it's that Simtom is pop cap. Population stands at 200 for Simtom, 109 for AltCtrl, and now that we're into a lot of production of AltCtrl, he's not going to be able to make a mass to contest this Chinese army.
You can heard me. He's got some knights out, but it's about 5 minutes too late. The knight transition needed to happen earlier than it did. Now, that the enemy is on top of your production, it's a little bit too late. He's going to have to rebuild the stables that are going down to keep the knights coming out. If he had this knight transition just a little bit earlier, this could have been a really different scenario. You're also right about the Springolds. Knights plus Springolds would have put themselves in a lot better position here. But as it stands, they're going to come in. There's just enough crossbowmen here that they're going to be able to take down these knights. The spearmen are going to provide enough cover that none of the nested bees go down, and Simtom's push continues to remain large and in charge, doubling up the military count of AltCtrl and nearly tripling the amount of econ. Actually, I think Simtom is a little overboomed. I think he needs to sack some villagers here.
I was just going to say that. We're getting to a point where how many villagers is too many villagers, right? But with that push, I mean, AltCtrl, yes, a little late to the Springolds, but you got to remember that Simtom does have clock tower Springolds that have more health and take an extra Springold shot to go down. And when you're dealing with the siege, anti-siege microcosm in the large scale of the battle, that is so huge to determine battle. To me, I think it's one of the most broken things about China, is the fact that even though you have less and it takes less resources, the fact of how much health they have makes it such a huge factor. And we saw 2 Springolds from AltCtrl and 2 Springolds with Simtom, and there's a reason why Simtom has 2 Springolds and AltCtrl has 0.
This is the end. I don't want to call it too early, but this is I'm expecting AltCtrl to GG out any second now. Like, you've just seen your opponent who is not only pushing your base down, but he has enough spare res to go up to Imp. Any second now, these crossbowmen are going to become elite. The Palace Guards are going to be elite. Your production is in shambles. Like, I don't see any way back out of this for AltCtrl.
Yeah, these military schools are trying to pump out men-at-arms, and I can tell you, the men-at-arms in that school are cramming to try to pass these tests to get out there, because they need the army as quickly as humanly possible. And with Simtom just hitting Imperial Age, I'm actually surprised that GG wasn't called immediately.
I expected the Imp to come through and for AltCtrl to just GG out right then and there. He's a little bit more stubborn than that, wants to hang on just a little bit longer. Now, all 3 sacred sites have also been capped, so just to add a little bit of insult to injury, Simtom says, hey, look, if you don't want to GG, I'll just force you to leave the game in 10 minutes if you can't decap one of these sacred sites in the meantime. Right. So he's really up against the wall now.
Look at that military school, you know? I mean, I have trouble studying the way it is. Very difficult to concentrate when your room is on fire.
It's true. ADHD kids are really going to struggle when there's, big explosions and fireworks raining down while you're trying to take your maths exam.
Yeah, exactly. But Simtom, a little bit of a micro slip up here on the back end. All of his nest of bees are actually down. His springolds are down also. AltCtrl got a huge mangonel shot on some of these crossbows. I thought this was going to be a creep just for China to end up being at the landmarks of the Ottomans, but it looks like it's going to drag on a little bit longer.
I mean, yes and no. Like, that's a nice little win for AltCtrl, but there are so many res floating right now that Simtom will easily be able to replace this. He has all the production space in the world. Like, he even has a proxy base right outside of AltCtrl's where he could just instantly replace everything he's losing. So this is a stay of execution, not a real win as far as I'm concerned, because the Sacred Timer continues to tick down. Simtom will easily be able to replace everything that he has. He's making all of the res in the world. And actually, he is a little bit flipped up on gold for the time being. He has to migrate a lot of his villagers out to these large gold mines in the south eastern corner. But yeah, not even that will be enough. The GG finally comes through, and Simtom takes the victory here on Madarisa? What is this map called?
Maracita.
Something like that. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, it's 1-0 in favor of Simtom on whatever that map. Sorry, that just struck me. That struck a nerve, apparently. And if we want to take a look at what is the deciding factor in this game, look at this villager count graph, and hold on, let me pull it back on the screen, and then I don't really need to say anything else. How well he can actually do that. Now, this is a map we've not seen yet today, which is interesting. So, King of the Hill, obviously, being only one sacred site, but in the south, we'll do the south first. Spawning in as the Chinese, it is AltCtrl. And who do we have spawning in the north?
Up north, playing as the HRE for the first time today. This is the first time we get to see the HRE today. I'm very excited about that. It is Simtom in the blue. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how this one plays out. This is going to be like, this is an action-packed game. Like, I do not see this being a big boom fest. I see the HRE coming out swinging, putting on a lot of feudal pressure, and the Chinese either crumbling underneath it or rising to meet it and probably exceeding it. But I think the Holy Roman Empire is kind of going to be the pacemaker here. They are going to be the ones in control of how fast the game goes and how much aggression is going to happen, because they have the skills to put the Chinese under pressure, and they want to do so because they do not want to let the Chinese just sit back and boom for free.
And, on this map, this is the first time that I'm going to use this saying is you have to play the map you're given. If China and AltCtrl wants to do China things and boom back and wait till they have, 90, 100 villagers before doing something, I honestly think Simtom would be okay with it, because then he would just take the sacred site and put him on a timer, right? This is the map where it is punishing, like game losing punishment if you choose to border yourself in your corner of the map. So Chinese is going to have to do a little bit of movement in Feudal Age. I'd love to see some Zug Nu come out in Feudal Age. Simtom on the other side is probably going to have to do a little bit of feudal aggression. I don't think we're going to see any kind of fast castles here, to be honest.
I think it's actually possible. I don't know how likely it is, but I could see a world in which Simtom goes for fast castle so that he can very early cap the sacred site and start making like a defensive position there. Because what you can do for yourself is you can set up keeps on the sacred site and then kind of hold the top of the hill from a very early place. And that puts you in a really strong defensive position where you force the Chinese to come up to you, and they want to build Zuganu, right? Zuganu can't do anything into keeps. They're not going to do any damage to the keeps. So they just run into a meat grinder trying to get themselves onto the sacred site while you've already set yourself up with an early keep. Now, it's not easy to do. It relies on the Chinese being a little bit passive. But if Simtom is able to fast castle and then early throw down a keep and take the sacred site up top, he'll find himself in a really, really strong position here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him at least attempt it.
I think he's going to have a little bit of a problem when it comes to AltCtrl if he does attempt to do it, because I have 7 villagers, and you're seeing it on your screen also, moving north. I thought there was going to be a Barbican on the sacred site. They've bypassed the sacred site entirely. They're looking for a face Barbican rush, similar to what Simtom tried to do against Salami's Malians in a prior game. What do you think about the Barbican?
We've seen it once before. It didn't work that well. This one's a bit better because it's actually going to push them off of gold. But they're trying to... I don't know, man. This is weird. This is uncharted territory. I don't know how I feel about this.
I think
think it goes up. I don't think they can stop it from... No, it doesn't. Yeah. He pulled enough villagers to stop it. So, okay, now with the benefit of hindsight, I've decided I hate this Barbican. It's bad.
Now, with... see, I think if AltCtrl's micro was a little bit better, I think he would have been able to do it, because all of the villagers for the HRE were attacking the solo villager of AltCtrl. I think if AltCtrl pulled villagers one by one while continuing to build the Barbican, I think it had a good chance of going up. Because if that Barbican did go up, it meant that his Simtom's Aachen Chapel was completely denied. So that would have been huge. But now AltCtrl, with a lot of idle time and no villagers down in the making of trying to get the Barbican, but they do have to scurry with their tail between their legs all the way across to the opposite end of the map, while HRE is just going to continue to gather resources.
Yeah, and he doesn't have anything stopping him from continuing to produce out of this stable at this point. The Imperial Academy. So, interestingly, that was the first landmark, right? That wasn't the Song Dynasty landmark. That was the one they were going to use to go up to Feudal Age, was AltCtrl. Now that they've canceled it, they have to run all the way home and now drop the Imperial Academy, which is going to go up fast, right? Because it's China, they build fast. But... yeah. Still, that is multiple minutes that the Chinese are behind upon reaching Feudal Age, let alone producing anything, getting up to anywhere, meaningful after that. I think when Simtom sees how far behind the Chinese are in reaching Feudal Age, I wouldn't be surprised to see him instantly just produce some horsemen out of this stable and start raiding, because he knows, yep, there it is. Mm-hmm. Horsemen thrown out immediately. Because he knows that there's absolutely nothing here to defend.
Yeah, and there won't be for a considerable amount of time, because basically up until about 2/3 after you were explaining Simtom's state of mind right now, AltCtrl's TC was idle throughout that whole time, because he pulled all of his food villagers to go make the Barbican. He didn't have enough food to actually produce villagers out. So even though AltCtrl does have a small advantage, not Song Dynasty 1, and 2, his villagers only get that little bit extra in terms of drop-off, where most of Simtom's villagers are inspired.
I also really want to talk about how smart... So you mentioned play the map you're given, right? Mm-hmm. Simtom is doing that to perfection right now. Look at the direction that his base is building. He spawns in towards the top of the map. Every single building he has built since then has been towards the sacred site. He's claiming all of this territory. He's making sure that He's got structures in place. He's got military production closer to reinforce. He's got outposts that are being built now within one screen of the sacred site, so he can shoot at it if there are enemy units on it. Meanwhile, AltCtrl has expanded away from the sacred site. All of his buildings are further away from the sacred site than his town center is, which means Simtom has effectively claimed the hill for himself already. You know, he can start putting down military production buildings. If he goes up to the next stage, it would be very easy for him to put a keep. It's not even really a forward keep. It's kind of a defensive keep. It would protect that relic. It would protect the outpost, and it would shoot at the sacred site. And that's kind of already his territory because Simtom has built in that direction.
Yep, you're exactly right. And that outpost is going to help you right on the outskirts of that hill as well. And now with all of this going on in front, there's a lot of focus on the hill, obviously, as there should be. On the backside, Simtom added a second town center by a woodline. He's getting a prelate to supervise and spread, the word of their lord, to go ahead and gather those the wood a little bit better. And now that he has some defensive structures up here with a wall that's going to help him with a gate, if he wants to take hill battles, he'll be able to retreat behind those hills, so that's going to help him out also. Simtom is setting up for what's going to happen at about the 16 to 17 minute mark, where it seems like AltCtrl is a little bit more short-sighted, just trying to stay alive.
Yeah, Simtom is playing absolutely perfect. Like, this is nearly faultless. I cannot find hardly a single thing I would criticize about his gameplay. You can tell that he came into this map with a plan and he is executing it. And AltCtrl is being the reactionary one. He's like, oh, I'm going up against the HRE. I'll try this Barbican rush. It doesn't work. He's then left to scramble. He throws down a barracks. Now he's trying to throw out some hardened spearmen. He's sending villagers forward again, probably for another attempt at an outpost drop. It's probably, he's going to be surprised to find that there's not really a great place for him to put anything up here. You can tell that Simtom is running the show right now, and he is doing it in such a masterful way that I just feel like he has all the cards in his hand right now. He looks so well set up for the mid to late game. The Barbican of the Sun does come up on the sacred site, but Barbicans are relatively easy to treb down compared to keeps. A lot squishier, and they don't have nearly as much firepower to keep units off of them.
Yeah, it's nice also with this because I think Simtom will end up being the first one to castle, I believe, based on how well he's doing in terms of inspiring most of his villagers, getting the farms around the Aachen, making sure his food is pretty much there. And we'll be the first one to probably get a treb out to take down this Barbican. But it's really nice as we're going into about the 10th minute of the game that Simtom has a villager count that's somewhat near China. We've seen a lot of China games where at this point in the game they have 55 villagers, and that's when it's an issue. But now that it's pretty much equal and he has inspiration, I would argue that Simtom's economy is better right now.
Well, the reason for that is that AltCtrl never went into the Song Dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
The Barbican just came down at 10 minutes. So that's all of that time that Chinese are normally producing villagers at, it used to be 50% faster, now it's 30% faster, that they've just been on parity. In fact, it's been better than that because Simtom had a second town center. And AltCtrl is still on one town center. So even though the Song Dynasty has been reached, Simtom is actually still outproducing economic units compared to AltCtrl, on top of the 40% extra that he gets from inspiration. So he is doing great right now. He has surrendered a little bit of control over the top of the hill for the time being because he allowed the Barbican to go up and there's some troops there. But it's going to be real easy for him to retake them if he goes up to castle because he can treb down the Barbican and then he can kill these, inferior units using what, extra economy that he has. It actually will be AltCtrl, I think, going up to castle first. He has the gold. He's almost got the food. So it shouldn't be too much longer before he's able to make something happen in terms of aging up. But I think Simtom is still relatively okay with this position. I think he's happy with this.
Yeah, a little like from AltCtrl, because you said he was going up to castle, and he will be. I'm sure he'll be hitting the clock tower button pretty soon as he comes down right now. But kind of weird that he started producing units, and he started producing really quickly with a military count of 18. And then I feel like there was a little bit of indecisiveness there because he stopped and then it was like, oh, I'm close to castle, so let's do that instead. Because I was about to say he was going for some kind of rush here because of how much military he was producing and rather quickly, but he's backing down.
Yeah, it was a little bit interesting. It was like a plan was half decided upon, and then he second guessed himself, and we had this stall out phase where not a lot happened for a few seconds. So now that it has gone through, the defensive positioning, even though the top of the hill is claimed by AltCtrl, Simtom is happy to defend from this point because it'll be relatively easy for him to make sure this sacred site is never capped.
Hmm.
It's real easy for him to make sure that the clock, that the onus is not put down upon him. He's able to push some of those spearmen off of his wall. He's got archers flanking around the side. I think he knows about these villagers that are taking deer on the side of the mountain right here, and he's planning on moving the archers in place to pick up a ton of Vil kills, put him even further ahead of Eco. And that's not something we're used to saying about the Chinese being behind in Eco.
Hmm. No, you're exactly right. And a heads up play by AltCtrl walling. I think that was just more luck than anything else, but did put a wall there just in time. And going for more walls both on the west and east side, trying to shore up his defenses. Simtom going with Regnitz Cathedral. You got to think this is better than Burgrave right now, right?
It plays into what he's going for, right? The HRE can go for a heavy rush kind of style, and that's when you want to go Burgrave. That's what we were expecting to come out from Simtom here because he picked the HRE, but he didn't. He went for a really economic play, and it's working out in his favor. So how do you make that economy work even better for you? Well, you make it even, you increase the economic strength disparity you have over the Chinese by going for something that makes your economy even better. Hence the choice of, the Regnitz Cathedral. Just make your eco even better so that you can out-eco the Chinese. Now, they are going to lose this gate on the right side. I'm not sure why the archers didn't rotate over here. Feels like it would have been really easy for them to clean up these hardened spearmen, but they chose not to for some reason. And that does mean the wall is going down, and AltCtrl will move in and start to put some pressure onto Simtom. I'm not sure where these archers are going.
Yeah, it looks like all the way on the west side now they're going to come
Simtom,
back. Um,
Simtom.
yeah, because he has had a rather immediate threat back home. These farms near the Aachen Chapel should be sacred for the Holy Roman Empire, and being able to not farm them is a huge disadvantage. But that Archer Master is going to come in from the west side. I don't know if he is going to have enough here, but it looks like the Zugnu taking shots at the Horsemen instead. It's going to give the Archers a little bit of time. Remember, there is a Palace Guard in there, so if he micros incorrectly, he might end up hitting the Palace Guard instead, and more of them are coming to reinforce.
It was very strange. I am not sure what happened there with maybe just not paying close enough attention, APM lacking. I'm not sure, but Simtom could have very easily kept them out of the wall on the right-hand side, instead let them through, ran his archers to the wrong side, and is now getting his eco idled and cleaned up around his base because he just didn't have the decision-making quick enough to stop this from happening. That felt very avoidable, and he just GG's right out.
Oh, man. This is
That was
perplexing.
strange.
Perplexing is the word I'll give it.
Yeah.
That was that was quite the issue. I get why Simtom left the game. I mean, there was no way they were going to be able to stop it just because there were a lot of armored units in his base. So town centers aren't going to be able to clean it up or anything like that. He's out there getting relics. Regnitz Cathedral probably only able to get 2 based on the walling. From AltCtrl did a good job of establishing a little bit of map control with those walls, and the only thing he had were feudal age archers that weren't able to kill palace guards or lancers. So he would have had 30 idle economy for probably the next inevitability for the foreseeable future.
It's just that was such a strange chain of events. I don't even think that the Regnitz was. I still think the Regnitz was the right call. I just think there was such a strange chain of events. Why idle your military production? Why move the archers around to the wrong side of the map? Like, it was just, all of it was very strange. I don't know if that was a pathing bug caused by the weird cliffs or what, but just through a weird chain of events, Simtom, I'm gonna be honest, kind of just threw away the lead that he had right there.
Yeah, I mean,
I know it's a little rude, but I call it like I see it,
right.
Like,
I mean, I just kind of felt like that was his game to lose. And we have on the screen right now playing as the Roos. It is Simtom, and who do we have on the southeast?
In the southeast, playing in the color red, we have AltCtrl.
Oh yeah, big bad HRE player, and as a Roost connoisseur myself, I usually like seeing HRE. Um, as far as you know from this matchup, who and now that we saw a couple games out of both players, uh, who do you like in terms of Roost versus HRE matchup?
Uh, Not long ago, I would have said Roos, but
Mhm.
the recent changes to town centers, making it a lot more difficult for Roos to get multiple TCs, and then I actually think the Holy Roman Empire are pretty good here. There is a really good strategy for them where they go up quickly to castle and do a Burgrave spam,
Mhm.
and if they can get enough kind of men at arms in and around the Roos villager line before the Roos can get up to castle as well, the Roos have pretty much no answer for it because until you get to crossbows, the Roos cannot counter men at arms. They just don't have what they need to do it. So it's very. I mean, they do have early knights, I guess, that can go kind of toe to toe with, but they're so much more expensive. It's really tough for you to get them out in meaningful numbers in order to counter the men at arms that are just coming at you all the time.
Mhm.
Especially because they get the upgrades. The men at arms get the HRE men at arms get the upgrades against armored units and two-handed weapons and all that stuff, right? So between all that stuff, I think the if AltCtrl plays the timings properly and is able to get his build out correctly, he's going to look really good here in the kind of mid game against the Roos.
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of the times, when I'm playing Roost against HRE, I just never let it get there, and I go for more of a feudal aggression, making sure you're pumping out early knights, um, just because men at arms are a factor, and the noose and the knights are going to be good for you. Um, Also, it's important to get that bounty for Roos in Dark Age, and Simtom actually with 4 scouts throughout the map, so we'll get the majority of sheep also. And I did see he got 2 full deer patches totaling 140 bounty, and we saw 2 wolves go down in the process. Along with this, he's got to be over 250 by now. Accurately gets wheelbarrow. So Simtom's early game is setting up pretty nice.
It's looking really good. I'm really impressed with how it's going so far. Really kind of playing to the strengths of the HRE so far. This is a pretty good Aachen Chapel. I don't know if it gets that gold mine. Does it get that gold mine?
Yeah, it's just in that tile range.
Okay.
It'll probably yeah, it'll end up getting those 3 villagers. To be honest, I don't know if I like that placement too much. I would rather it in between the gold and the wood. Just because you can move these sheep more northwest and make sure that they're covered too. You'd be able to get the berry patches also if you're able to
Yeah.
do that. I think this is a
No,
mistake
you're
by Alt
right.
Control.
No, I'm changing my mind now. I think you're right. I like that spot better too, because then you miss out on the berries, but the berries are a pretty limited source of food because they're not buffed up by if they're not like deli berries or anything. So there's only like 1,500 food there or something like that. So in the long term, I think having the boost on the wood would be more valuable than this extra little bit of berries here. So I think you're right.
Um, I mean, yeah. I mean, he's gonna get some. He's basically just using this Akka Chapel as a mill, essentially, going right up against the berries, right? Um, so no mill in the vicinity for all control, which means no wheelbarrow in the vicinity for him as well. Now, for the Roos going up with the Golden Gate, which this is the first time we've seen the Golden Gate, and we're like 4 hours in, which is shocking.
I know. It's incredible.
Um, um, do you, as a Roos player, do you think boar's a good idea?
Let me see. Where are the boars spawn? I actually haven't looked at that yet. There's not a bad one over by the Eastern Sacred Site.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I could see that one getting taken. Like if a second town center is dropped, kind of between these berries and the wood on the western side, that would mean you're very safe. You could drop a mill out there on that boar or lure it in and kill it under the town center, and that's a great source of food that you collect really fast. So I kind of like it actually, especially if you're able to drop a town center out there first so that your bills are safe.
Right.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, big boar guy. Not even. It feels like the second town center because this used to be like standard Roost stuff. You'd go get a boar, you drop a town center near it, and then you're good to go. Kind of fallen by the wayside just because of how difficult it is to get the second town center and the timing. So even just a hunting cabin and a wooden fortress is fine. You know, you could get away without the wooden fortress just because the HRE probably not going to be aggressive to you, so you could probably save the wood and make a production building instead. And it looks like that's exactly what they're doing. We have 8 villagers going to the eastern side, and at the same time, there are early knights being in production for the stable because this AltCtrl gold here for the HRE, it's pretty forward.
Yeah, Simtom really trying to make sure that that does not go away for free. Always dropping the scout. AltCtrl already going to lose the scout. So these knights, or excuse me, these scouts, while there's 4 of them and scouts don't do that much damage versus villagers, what they can do here is continuously kind of annoy and idle them, keep them moving around, keep using up APM for AltCtrl, and that hopefully throws off his build and his game plan for the rest of the time. It also means AltCtrl feels responsible to build a stable and start producing military units right now, which means that any age up to the castle age is going to be slower. This is essentially, even though it does almost nothing to the villagers, it's slowing down and throwing off his build timing.
Yep. Yep, it's sometimes doing it perfectly. I was going to say with the scouts doing their little bit of chip damage, it means that if a knight charges, he could just get an instant kill on a villager, which could prove beneficial. But he ends up pulling them and putting them back to the sheep, and the knight's going to look for the wood line. Back up north, Simtom did not go for a wooden fortress and decided to pull that pork over near the forest area, so the hunting cabin's getting 18 gold per minute, and survival techniques, which is going to help him in this feudal age. So I think he's trying to really keep AltCtrl in feudal age for the foreseeable future.
Well, I mean, survival techniques is just free money, basically, at this point. It's so freaking cheap. And there's all of these dead deer right in front of Simtom's base. If he throws down a secondary town center there, or even just a hunting cabin, there's so much extra food that you'd be getting from a upgrade that's basically free. It's like 75-25 or something. So totally worth it. I think it's a smart play.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, we can count them here. I mean, there's 14 deer. These good spawn for roosters. Those deer patches spawned right next to him. But he's doing raids with the APM here, and also on the west side and the east side, the closest relics to AltCtrl, Simtom is walling with fortified palisades. So those prelates won't be able to just reach out and pluck those relics when Castle Age does show up. Simtom seems like he's played HRE against HRE probably hundreds of times and is just going through the motions at this point.
That's what I was going to say. I felt like this is another example, just like the last game, where Simtom knows exactly what his plan is going into this matchup and is like, all right, I have a checklist. I do X, Y, and then Z, and I win. Now, it didn't really work out for him last time, but we're not talking about that. Point is, he's in great control of where the early to mid game is going here, and it's looking really good for him.
Yep, absolutely. And now he's extending even farther now as we hit about the 9th minute, so very good timing from Simtom, and going to be able to mass out archery ranges with 4 of them. Again, with the roost having wheelbarrow and with the wooden fortress means your villagers drop off 18 wood at a time. 15 and then an extra 3 just because of the wooden fortress. So he's going to be able to pump out archers rather consistently and take down any spearmen that AltCtrl decide to make, which he already has 5. But the archers are going to be in mass very shortly.
Very true. And the thing is, we were talking about that timing at the beginning of the game where HRE kind of goes for a fast castle sort of thing, and they get men-at-arms in underneath the town center raiding the villagers before the roost can do too much about it. The slowdown that happened on the gold and just kind of the general throw-off of the build, you can tell that was kind of AltCtrl's plan, but it's been all thrown off. His build order, you can tell, is wrong. He just had to re-macro some gold, and then he had the wrong amount of food, and he still hasn't clicked up, and we're almost at 10 minutes. Like, that was his plan, but Simtom was able to throw him off of his build order, and it just isn't working out the way he really wanted it to. He can't pick up these relics like he wants to, even when he gets to Castle Age. It's all just gone wrong for AltCtrl, and you can tell he's uncomfortable. He doesn't like this position, and he's trying to kind of make the most of a bad situation at this point. But Simtom is just thriving in this chaos. He's thrown down a second town center on these deer, just like we talked about, so that'll be food forever. He's feeling great right now.
Yeah, I mean, just with these little bit of walls, look how much time this is saving him. You know, I mean, the Regnitz Cathedral is going to take a minute to go up, and by the time those walls actually go down, just because they're fortified palisades, they have a lot of health to them. the prelates are going to be delayed a little bit, and this is honestly because this wall is going down on the east side. This is going to be the only safe relic he's going to get.
Yeah, and it means that he knows that the relics are now kind of an interesting point. Like they're a point of interest for AltCtrl. So Simtom goes, okay, he's probably going Regnits. He wouldn't care this much about relics if he was, not that interested in going Regnits. I mean, he might still, but chances are better that he's going Regnits, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that gives him information about the age up that his opponent is going at, about his future game plans. He knows there's not an all-in coming his way in the next 10 minutes. So that can inform him about what decisions he needs to make next. Now he's getting a little bit cleaned up by these horsemen. They are going to trade well into these archers. So I wouldn't move too far forward if I were Simtom here. You don't want to throw this army away that you've built up. But he has certainly put himself in the driver's seat for the time being. He's a town center up. AltCtrl still only on one base. He is down in age, but if he idles out his eco, he could get up as really quickly because he's making so much money right now. Mm-hmm. And he feels like he's kind of running the game so far.
And I think what you just said might be the play for him, because it's all about delaying castle or stopping it entirely, which Simtom did a good job delaying. But now the Castle Age units are going to start to come out. The Castle Age Knights, the men-at-arms are going to get upgraded, and that kind of stuff, where your Feudal Age archers aren't really going to be doing much to them, even with the +1 upgrades. So it begs the question when Simtom will actually go there, because of the food economy that he has. Yes, he has the deer. That boar has been largely gathered up, so they went back to the deer also. He needs a lot of food to sustain things like 2 sound center production, plus knights, plus archers.
You're absolutely right. And I don't know, I'm just really impressed with this, including a big wall. I always got a ways to go before it's going to be up, because one, these are Rus, and they're fortified palisade walls, and they take a long time to construct. And two, it's being done by one villager. So this is going to take a while for these walls to get up. But it signifies the intent of Simtom. He wants to play safe, defensive, and go towards the later stages of the game, because he feels like if he can survive the Castle Age rush, that he'll be okay in the late game.
Yeah, and I think just based on Simtom's economy, he can really do that and get to that late game economy a little bit quicker, right? Just having that second town center, it looks like he has the majority of the map in terms of map control, and I don't think he's going to be letting up on that anytime soon. So now that this villager lead starts to progress in favor of Simtom, we might see maybe a late Castle Age takeover instead, but he set himself up in a pretty good spot for it.
Well, a couple knights have arrived trying to make sure that this wall does not go down. AltCtrl a little late to react, doesn't notice until a couple of his units have already gone down. But yeah, this is still, one thing to remember is that this ball of archers here for Simtom are still incredibly counterable by everything that HRE likes to do. HRE likes to build knights, they like to build men-at-arms. Both of those things counter archers really hard. So this army looks threatening on paper, but it really is not that scary for AltCtrl to deal with. And I think it's really important that Simtom diversify his building or his unit comp into something that will trade better into what the Holy Roman Empire likes to build.
And it's a good transition with the archery ranges that he has. This just kind of works out for Rus in this matchup, because he can start spamming out crossbowmen, right? He already has the military production to do that, so I imagine that's what he ends up doing. Goes with the Abbey of the Trinity, so he will age up just a little bit, take him a little bit longer to age up, but also in the back, a third town center. Now the town center count 3-1 in favor of Simtom, and this really is setting up for a late game economy very quickly.
Yeah, Abbey of the Trinity signifies that as well, right? It's Abbey of the Trinity is about getting more gold. It gets you further ahead. It's all about the eco. It's not something that is going to accelerate you forward in the short term. It's all about the long term. Simtom is in this for a long haul. And as long as he can continue to deny these sacred sites from the HRE, he's in a pretty good spot to do this. He's going to lose a villager down at the bottom part, though. Unfortunately, the knight catches him building the very long, slow wall, and he's going to shut that down before it's completed.
Yeah, just that was pretty good foreshadowing by you, just because that one villager takes a long time to build. But with Castle Age coming up in favor of Simtom, food economy still has to get a little bit structured. He is adding farms, but they got idled for a little bit, and he still has sheep down here. Besides crossbowmen, what unit do you think you got to make if you're the Russian player?
Spearmen. He needs spearmen. There's a lot of knights. There's a lot of horsemen coming out here. The horsemen will counter the crossbowmen. So you need spearmen to keep the horsemen off of your squishy ranged mass. He could also go into maybe horse archers to try and do a little bit of raiding. But I think in terms of holding off what's already here, he needs spearmen and he needs archers. He needs crossbowmen.
Horse archers, don't threaten me with a good time. And another good time is all of these men-at-arms, lancers, and horsemen running havoc over the main town center of the Rus base. Those archers finally getting up to veterans, so they'll be able to do a little bit more damage than they might be used to doing as feudal age archers. But he's going to need a crossbow mass out of this archery range. The issue is there's a lot of knights, there's a lot of men-at-arms over here about these archers, and they're dropping like flies. He needs to mass these up near, maybe outside of this production area to be able to take these things out. But I agree with your spearman idea.
Yeah, I mean, these archers are all going to get cleared up. We talked about this a couple minutes ago, that archers are useless into what the HRE wants to build. So he doesn't want to lose these, but he also isn't that upset about them dying because they're not what he needs. He needs crossbowmen and spearmen in order to hold off the HRE right now. And if he can get that, he should survive the next couple minutes. But that's the big tipping point right now, is can Simtom survive the push over the next few minutes and avoid getting overrun by the HRE deathfall? If he can, he's in good shape.
Right. And I think he's going to have a capability of doing that just because AltCtrl's leaving him alone in his base after that initial raid. He's more worried about getting relics than stopping Simtom's economy, which I would like to think that the economy might be more important because Simtom has a 21 villager lead. But now that Abbey of the Trinity is going to be pumping out some warrior monks, the prelate from AltCtrl stole that little cheeky relic up north, and I wasn't expecting that. But it still looks like, in terms of relic count, it's going to be 3-2 in favor of Simtom.
I don't know about this. Simtom tries to send his archers down to stop that relic from getting taken and burned down, but I feel like that is just asking for all of your archers to die, because these are knights and they hard counter archers about as anything else in the game will. So this is just going to be a straight cleanup at this point. Now, there are crossbowmen coming out very slowly that will start to trade better into this, but he does need as many as he can get as fast as possible. Honestly, Simtom, a little bit of strange macro. He's floating a ton of wood, but is desperately starving for food and gold. Would love to see that ironed out just a little bit. He'd probably feel a lot better about this transition if he wasn't so strangely divided between resources there.
And, you know, this happens so much for Rus, just because of how well you can gather wood. And now in this area of the game, kind of like this mid-castle, you get to a point where your Gaia food resources run out. And these last of the deer are going to end up getting gathered. The last of his sheep are going to end up getting gathered. So with all of that wood, you have to make a farm transition. And I don't think this is a time where Simtom wants to do that. He needs to mass up those crossbowmen, and he's making knights, which are super expensive.
Those knights definitely going to take a while to pay for themselves because they cost, 4 times as much as a spearman, twice as much as a man-at-arms. They do a lot of work, but you're right, they're expensive. And Simtom just kind of needs numbers right now. Another warrior monk going to sneak in and steal away one of these relics. His AltCtrl actually went to the effort of burning down the wall, but Simtom snuck in and picked up the relic before AltCtrl could.
Now with this mass, he's got 11 crossbowmen. This could be enough.
This is what he was waiting for. He needed an amount of crossbowmen that could stand up against these knights. Now that it's arrived, he feels a lot more secure in taking a fight, and you can see how much better for him it goes, right? He's tried to pick a fight with like that ball of archers. It did nothing. He lost the ball. He shows up with the right amount of crossbows, and he clears up every single thing that AltCtrl has. That's what Simtom was waiting for, was for the mass to build that he can stand up to the HRE. Now that he's kind of comfortable in his position, he is okay for the time being. It was important that he survive that period of time where he was making the transition. But now that he has, he should be okay. In fact, he can even make that farm transition that he needs to do now without any fear.
Yeah, and I think that's most important. Yeah, you're exactly right, because now we have 13 idle villagers that don't have any deer anymore. which actually they're going to go to wood, which shocks me a little bit. But what really helps you in this situation, as yeah, farms are going up, is the Golden Gate helping you out. When you don't have food, when you don't have that outside food resource, getting something like the Golden Gate to help you out is a fantastic idea. Also, for people who do play Roost, don't be afraid to build your own market. I know the Golden Gate's better trade, but sometimes a market's going to help you, and I think in Simtom's case, it would really help him.
Yeah, he could definitely provide some more gold and food for himself, which he needs to continue getting all of those troops out. Now, he's also capturing a sacred site up. That passive gold that he's bringing in from relics and sacred sites will also start to help balance his economy out. You can see he's got 1,400 gold a minute coming in compared to the HRE's 850. And, that's the HRE. They still do well for themselves in terms of passive gold. So he's doing quite well to keep himself so stacked for gold for the time being. It also helps that he's 40 villagers up, but
Yeah, I mean, it's going to help him pump them out. But also we have a couple horse archers in the mix. My favorite unit in the game. The horse archer coming in, and he's queuing them at a rather alarming pace. All of these archer rages pumping them out. These are surprisingly really effective against knights for just because of the sheer amount of attack. AltCtrl with 5 ranged armor in terms of defense, and the horse archers having 14 attack. They can shred through them pretty quickly if you're not careful. Plus, if you have a warrior monk with them having a little saint's blessing, means it could be a little extra attack.
What it also does is it makes it difficult for AltCtrl to try and pivot, that's the word I'm looking for, into crossbowmen. It's tempting for AltCtrl to look at this big old mass of knights and be like, oh, all right, crossbowmen, I'll build crossbowmen. You can't do that as soon as you see the horse archers on the field, because the horse archers will eat through the crossbowmen, and then that's the end of that. They're more mobile, they have a decent range, and they, can do good damage against the crossbowmen's mostly pierce damage to armor. So it feels a lot better to make that transition when there's no horse archers on the field. Now, these knights are a little bit out of position. They're kind of all on their own, some getting cleaned up. Not the rest of the Simtom's army is rotating in, but they actually...
Oh, yeah!
His army. Those knights just kind of stood their ground all on their own.
I just saw... I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just saw a warrior monk get a nice little lance in there, so Saint's Blessing coming in. +2 damage, +1 armor for Saint's Blessing. And I know that not a lot of people maybe use warrior monks in their battles as roosts. You have got to use them. They are so good. Having that little bit of ranged armor, especially behind outposts like this. I apologize to cut you off. I just got really excited.
No, dude, please, by all means. It's true. They're really, really good. I think the other thing that you can reliably see as far as why Simtom is trading so well in these fights, look at his upgrades. He is across the board just better upgraded in terms of military upgrades than his opponent, and continuing to get upgrades. He's got, +2 armor coming through right now. Or, excuse me, +2 melee attack.
Yeah, the melee attack's going to help in the Lancer-to-Lancer battles. What's it called? The Boyar's Fortitude for the horse archers and the knights are going to help him out too. It means those horse archers are even better against crossbowmen. And now with this mass, I mean, there's nothing he can do. He's got to tap out. The military count was 62-6 at the end.
Yeah. As soon as you were done talking, I was going to say the military count means that this game is pretty much over, because with only 6 military left, that fight was pretty much the last stand for AltCtrl to make something happen there, and it did not go his way. So Simtom going to be victorious in a 2-1, taking out AltCtrl and moving on in this tournament. That was an excellent game for us to see. I had fun watching that one.
Oh man, just a little Saint's Blessing like that just warms my heart. I just love seeing it. Yeah, I mean, excellent. We saw Simtom in feudal, like, he was playing to win at this point in the game, right? Just the walling of the relics, the adding of town centers, so they all paid off right about at this moment. But then having that roost, that unstoppable ball of force. And for how meaty they are. I mean, knights with 250 health and horse archers with 105, they're rather resilient.
It's really interesting to watch the way Simtom played the last couple of maps. You could tell both of them. He entered the map having a game plan. He had a checklist in mind. He began working on it. There was kind of an unfortunate turn of events, and something weird happened with game number 2. But outside of that, like, he kind of just ran the games because he knew what needed to be done. He had a plan and he did it. Just, no questions asked. It was very decisive play. And I really like seeing that. I think it was just very well done from Simtom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was pretty methodical, I would say. Villager count at the end showing, about 120 in favor of Simtom, and AltCtrl staying on that 1 TC, being at about, 60, and it's difficult when you don't get those relics in Regnitz. You don't have the ability to get to Imperial at the time that you want, so the Swabia can kind of bail you out in that front. If you leave that go for too long, how that ends up coming into play.
We want to thank our MetaPlace website subscribers. Your contribution helps us keep the project sustainable. As we reach higher subscription goals, you are helping us cover more and more behind-the-scenes costs, such as video editing. Check out our subscription page using the link in the description, and remember to collect your perks. We will see you the next time.